Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. So, from Monday's video, we need to revisit Proposal 12 and clarify whether this was a binding proposal or whether it was an advisory proposal. Each proposal will fall under one of those two categories. If it's binding, that means Tesla's board has to follow however the shareholders vote. However, if it's an advisory proposal, that basically just means the board will take the results under consideration, but they're not legally forced or required to act on it. And looking at the 8K, you'll see for Proposal 2, they said non-binding advisory basis. And 7 for XAI, this was an advisory vote. And just to clarify, because I got some questions in the comments, Tesla says our bylaws generally consider abstention as votes against. And we can debate if that's a good idea or not, but it is what it is. But making it to Proposal 12, you'll see at least on the 8K, it did not say anything about it being an advisory proposal. However, if you go back to Tesla's definitive proxy statement, you will find Proposals 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13 and 14 are all advisory proposals. This means the outcome of the votes on these proposals are not binding on the company. So yes, Alexandra is correct in that Tesla's board does not have to act on this one. But the reason I said I still don't like it is because of what I think is likely to happen. There is actually precedence for Tesla acting on advisory proposals in the past by offering up binding proposals in future years. For example, Tesla did this with the supermajority voting requirements. It went from an advisory vote that shareholders voted for, and then in following years, Tesla offered it up as a binding proposal, but it's one that has not passed in its binding form. So I just think given all of the scrutiny Tesla's board has been facing as of late, I'm guessing that Tesla won't just completely ignore this one, and they will have a binding vote next year for shareholders to decide if they want to vote on the board of directors every year. So thank you guys for bringing this up in the comments. I definitely should have clarified this on Monday. We have the White House exploring new rules that would upend shareholder voting. Specifically, Trump officials are discussing at least one executive order that would restrict proxy advisory firms like ISS and Glass Lewis. Officials are also exploring limits on how index fund managers are allowed to vote. In case you're not familiar, these advisory firms are the two biggest proxy firms, and they analyze shareholder proposals and corporate governance issues and provide voting recommendations to institutional investors ahead of annual meetings. In case you missed it, these are the firms Elon has referred to as corporate terrorists. And this is actually a big deal because these two firms alone control around 90% of the market for providing these voting recommendations. And these firms don't own any shares themselves, but they still have outsized influence because of all of the passive index funds. Those from the likes of Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, and others will outsource their voting decisions to these proxy firms. And more often than not, the institutional investors will just blindly follow the advice, which means in practice, a small handful of advisors that, by the way, are unelected, will effectively control the voting outcomes for trillions of dollars of public company shares. And we've had front row seats to watching Elon shine a light on this problem for the past few years. Because at the end of the day, it's become pretty clear that these firms are prioritizing political ideologies rather than what's actually good for long-term shareholder value. So for now, it's not clear what these new measures are, but it's encouraging to hear there's motion on this one, and given how loud Elon has been about this is certainly validation for him and perhaps a subtle nod from the administration saying, Elon, we hear you and we value your input. Both Joe Tetmeyer and Holmars are now saying that FSD 14.1.7 is rolling out to employees as of this morning. We know 14.1.5 went out to some Cybertruck owners, but not yet all, and if you're still waiting, it's just a simple fact that it's not ready to go wide if it hasn't gone wide. But then there were reports that 14.1.6 was rolling out to employees over the past few days, but the scuttlebutt is that same thing. That one was not ready to go wide, and for whatever reason, instead of continuing with .6, they now are apparently moving to .7, skipping a wide release of .6. And when it comes to the sudden braking and jarring behavior of 14.1.4 at times, Elon did clarify that there will be resolutions in 14.2. And Sawyer just said he just got 14.1.7 on his Model Y, so already expanding beyond just employees. Viv, who runs Tesla's social media, said it's funny how we're watching FSD grow up like a kid, and later in the thread, Elon said you can feel the sentience of the car growing, it is palpable. Ashok shared a post saying Teslas are trending to become an essential need. And this was the post Ashok shared. My wife got into labor unpredictably early and had to get herself to the hospital before I could. The Tesla drove her all the way while she had contractions every few minutes. Definitely a great car. I will keep offering up the reminder that reasoning has not yet been added to version 14. And despite my 20-minute video pointing out the shortcomings of version 14 in my first week, I do want to make it clear overall it's been very safe and nearly all of my drives are point-to-point without intervention. Yes, I still have the hesitancy and jarring braking behavior and some odd routing errors that I will share in a future video, but I've never felt unsafe or like I was put in any precarious situations. And perhaps the thing I'm most eager to try is FSD in the snow. And I know it's not really meant for this use case, and I will be taking all precautions, but it's going to be very interesting to see how version 14 performs. Someone shared this video with Sawyer of 14.1.4 in a Quebec snowfall. This isn't really a heavy snowfall in my opinion, but the roads are covered, and it's not really an eventful clip, but with Waymo quickly expanding to Detroit and touting its abilities in the snow, it'll just be great to see how Tesla performs right now compared to last year. Tesla shared a new video of supervised FSD testing in South Korea, saying that it's coming soon. Tesla launched in South Korea back in 2017, and you'll see that for 2020 to about 2023, they were doing between 10 and 20,000 sales per year. But in 2024, that number jumped to just shy of 30,000, and then for 2025, after we get Q4 data, they will likely be well over 40,000 units for the year. And further, Tesla set record deliveries in South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and Singapore in Q3 this year. Growth in South Korea was so robust, Tesla said, it was its third largest market in the quarter, behind only the US and China. And according to Korean import data for August, Tesla alone accounted for nearly 30% of that figure, highlighting its rapidly growing influence in a market traditionally dominated by German luxury brands. I was able to find this Korean source that put this out today. They said experts are saying Korea must conduct thorough reviews of its own self-driving environment alongside any rollout from Tesla. Recently, Tesla started requesting customer consent to share driving data, which is being used to enhance performance. They said from a regulatory standpoint, Korean traffic law does not permit drivers to remove their hands from the steering wheel or to change lanes automatically. This means the demo video by Tesla depicts behavior that is not legally permissible under current domestic regulations. And they said Tesla has not yet held any formal discussions with the government regarding the introduction of FSD. That coming from an official from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport. An automotive engineering professor in South Korea said since Tesla's FSD still requires driver intervention, it remains a partial automation system. Without regulatory reforms like those permitting hands-free driving or automatic lane changes, broad commercialization in Korea will be difficult to achieve. But as I like to say, Tesla always knows more than we do about regulatory environments and expected changes, so maybe in Q1 2026, supervised FSD can go broader in South Korea, but I would not expect it this year based on what I'm seeing. And we now have video confirmation of Tesla's supervised FSD working in Spain, Japan, Italy, the UK, Netherlands, France, Australia, Canada, the US, Mexico, China, Germany, Puerto Rico, New Zealand, and now South Korea. You know how Tesla has attended the Pwn to Own hackathon several times, even sponsoring the event? It's because Tesla knows digital nefarious actors are increasingly a threat, and Elon and Tesla put safety above everything else. So I think we should too. The Global Anti-Scam Alliance estimated scammers stole over $1.03 trillion worldwide in 2024, and that figure is expected to grow this year thanks to advancements in AI. So with scams becoming more sophisticated, it's more important now than ever to protect your family's personal information by signing up for Delete Me, the sponsor of this video. These scams tend to happen when bad actors get your email and phone number and even your home address and shopping habits. They learn your personal information, and it makes it much easier for them to target you. Delete Me does all of the legwork of removing your personal information from these data brokers so they can no longer sell your personal information online. Which, yes, they are doing whether you know it or not. You'll get your own privacy advisor with Delete Me if you have any questions, and the quarterly reports are quite detailed, telling you the removal status at each data broker. So if you want to save yourself hundreds of hours of laborious work, just have Delete Me do it for you. It's all they do, and it's very affordable. So if you want some peace of mind and your privacy back, and to support Electrified, you can head to joindeleteme.com/electrified to get 20% off using my code Electrified linked below, or by using the QR code on the screen. The Information did a piece on Drew Baglino's new company, Heron Power, that I think will play a critical role in many of Elon's ventures because they're targeting AI data centers. Heron Power is going to be manufacturing converters, rectifiers, and other electrical equipment to help deliver usable electricity to these AI data centers more efficiently. Heron is developing these solid-state transformers, which is going to convert high-voltage DC power from the grid to lower voltages for AI data centers to use. Heron's transformers are going to handle the work of multiple pieces of electrical equipment in one package, which, yes, is a trick he definitely learned at Tesla. In the interview, Drew said the technology hasn't really changed in over 100 years. We're proposing an ultimately obviously better technical choice and commercial choice for anybody doing anything large with new energy technology. And they said there's sometimes a months-long wait for delivery of the current equipment, which is far heavier and bigger than the gigascale solid-state electronics that Heron is developing. But Heron is saying they're aiming to start manufacturing in 2027. As of today, Heron now has about 40 employees, and there's not a lot out there about specifics of the company, but I think it's awesome to see how Tesla's influence really is going to go so far beyond just Tesla, with people like Drew and JB Straubel at Redwood and many others. But there was a quote at the end of the article from one of the investors in Heron. They said, if you talk to people from Tesla from any of the time Drew was there, they'll say things like, here's this one time this product was almost dead, or we had this problem we could not solve, and Drew was the one who saved us. He said, I think Drew is someone I would sort of bet on. I just wanted to quickly touch on this chart that ARK Invest put out in case you missed it. In short, they're saying that scaling robotaxis is likely to be much less complicated than scaling humanoid robots for several reasons. A robotaxi has a much more limited set of controls: accelerator, brake, and steering. Whereas a humanoid will have likely an order of magnitude more joints to coordinate and control. And yes, of course, a humanoid robot has more of an error tolerance than a robotaxi, because if a robotaxi fails and gets in an accident, it could be catastrophic, whereas Optimus tripping and falling is likely not going to be catastrophic. But you'll see they have this cumulative chart with these different categories, really showcasing how humanoids are going to have levels of complexity that robotaxis just don't have. And spoiler alert, their aggregate humanoid complexity ratio was 200,000 times more complex to scale humanoids than robotaxis. In blue, they have action bandwidth, which is going to talk about the control degrees of freedom and the control rate frequency. Yellow is interactions, meaning things like physical interactions, lower body and upper body. Green is scene entropy, meaning tracked objects in the near field, the number of semantically different objects, and the degree of the environment unstructuredness. Purple is task diversity, adjusted for generalizability. And then because humanoids are 100 times more error tolerant in ARC's estimates. That brings the complexity difficulty down a bit to get us to our final number. So this is part of why ARC still is not including any meaningful valuation for Optimus in their Tesla stock modeling. And I just think it's fascinating. We have people like Elon touting the fastest ramp ever for Optimus, and then we have the uber bullish tech firms like ARC highlighting how incredibly difficult it's going to be scaling generalized humanoid bots. So if you thought there was debate and confusion about autonomous rollouts and timelines, just wait until Humanoids and Optimus come into focus as we head into the second half of next year. Tesla released a quick teaser video about its upcoming debut in the Colombian market. Colombia sees around 200,000 vehicle sales per year, but the EV market is still very nascent. The government is doing what it can to incentivize this market, but for 2024, the country only had about 7,000 full BEV sales. So far this year, things are definitely looking better. They may be up over 20,000 BEV sales by the time the year is up. So percentage-wise, Colombia is growing quickly from an EV perspective. And as of today, there are currently no operational superchargers in Colombia. But I think it's time for a Tesla South America account because Colombia is in South America, not North. And you may remember back in September, Tesla posted its first job listings in Colombia, the second South American market after Chile. JD Power just put out its E-Vision intelligence report for November. They said a total of 243,000 franchise EV leases will come to an end in 2026, more than 3 times the volume of EV lease returns this year. And based on their behavior this year, 62% are expected to replace their vehicles with new EVs. Among current EV owners, 94% say they definitely will or probably will consider an EV for their next purchase or lease. The percentage of active new vehicle shoppers who say they're very likely to consider buying or leasing an EV in the next year jumped to 24.2% in October, up from 21.6% in September. This is the highest level of EV consideration since January 2025. They said for the month of October, the first full month after the tax credit is gone, EV sales plummeted by 53% and now represent just 6% of total monthly new vehicle sales, down from 12.9% in September. But the question remains, what will be the steady state demand going forward? Over 59% of new vehicle shoppers say they're very likely or somewhat likely to consider buying an EV in the next 12 months. And looking at the chart of auto shoppers very likely to consider an EV, there was a meaningful jump from September to October, but I think it's fair to wonder how many of these people are not aware that the EV tax credit is actually gone. Elon shared this, so I wanted to go through it, and it's easy to cherry pick the data and make it look like EV interest is off the charts, when in reality I would say it's up marginally. Drive Tesla Canada is reporting that some Chinese sources are saying the Model Y Plus, the new longest range variant in the lineup we covered on Monday, has generated enough orders on its first day to fill several weeks of production at Giga Shanghai. So look guys, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer out here, I'm just trying to be realistic because there are narratives out there about EV demand and Tesla demand now soaring again. And sure, there are some anecdotes you can cherry pick right now to paint that picture, but at the same time, like we covered on Monday, Giga Shanghai's domestic sales reading was the lowest in the past 3 years. That for October. And zooming out, the year-to-date numbers are still down year over year. And yes, we had the changeover to the new models in Q1 and Q2. All I'm trying to do is temper expectations, and I think that when we get Tesla's sales data for Q4, I don't think we're going to look back and say, wow, Tesla's demand really is soaring. Tesla Charging shared that live availability of superchargers is now active in Google Maps. I did check this on my app and it was live. You will just see in this green how many superchargers are available and how many are at that location. This would mean 2 out of 12 available. This would mean 15 out of 16 available. Max from Tesla said the next step for navigation providers is to go beyond live availability and also show real-time wait time, forecasted availability, and dynamically reroute customers based on forecasts. This is something Tesla's Trip Planner has been doing for years. He said, "We support adding forecasted availability when sharing traffic reciprocally as part of this standard next." Tesla Trip Planner is like an air traffic controller, knowing where planes are, their intentions, and assigning them to airports and runways. Hence, reciprocal traffic sharing is key as more navigation providers support EV drivers. We're excited to work with navigation providers on getting this right for EV drivers and going beyond live availability. Once again, Tesla choosing to do the right thing for the customers. Jim Farley sat down to do another interview with Business Insider, and he said, "I was very humbled when we took apart the first Tesla Model 3 and started to take apart the Chinese vehicles. When we took them apart, it was shocking what we found. The Mach-E has around 1 mile more electrical wiring than the Tesla, adding extra weight to the car and requiring a much bigger and more expensive battery." Farley said the teardowns convinced him the company had to change to match its new rivals. Talking about Ford getting into EVs, he said, "I knew it was going to be brutal business-wise. My ethos is take on the hardest problems as fast as you can and do it sometimes in public because you'll solve them quicker that way. We can't walk away from EVs, not just for the US, but if we want to be a global company, I'm not going to just cede that to the Chinese." In the near term, Farley's expecting 5% of the US market to be electric in the near term. That's full BEV. He said US consumers are more interested in affordable electric models than a $70,000 to $80,000 electric vehicle. And we know Ford's been touting its $30,000 mid-size truck expected to launch in 2027. So Farley can say all of the right things in public about not backing down, but we also just reported that Ford might be canceling the F-150 Lightning altogether. They're already losing billions of dollars. The regulatory and incentive environment in the US is changing rapidly, not in favor of electric vehicles. So it might be semantically true that they can't walk away from EVs, but they are definitely backing off in a meaningful way. Elon shared a post from Mario talking about the new Tesla Megapack factory in Houston. I did double check the careers page. There are 41 jobs for this mega factory. So Tesla is clearly in the hiring phase, and the word is Tesla will invest over $200 million in automation, robotics, and advanced manufacturing tech. By 2028, they'll employ at least 1,500 people in the region and must stay at that level for a decade. But just so you know, some of the megafactory listings are for Sparks, Nevada or Lathrop. They're not all Brookshire, Texas. Just in case you saw it, Joa was out here contacting someone at NHTSA about the exemptions that might be needed for the Cybercab next year. He said, "The person I spoke with had never heard of Cybercab, they were not familiar with FSD, and that Tesla has not applied for an exemption." In the comments, he said there's a reason Tesla has not applied for an exemption. I just wanted to say, we talked earlier this year about how NHTSA was streamlining parts of this 555 exemption process. So rather than getting into the details, I'm just saying I don't think it'll take more than a few months for Tesla to get these exemptions once they apply. Given that production of the Cybercab isn't set to begin until April, it's going to take a few months for production to actually scale. And Elon just told us he's not expecting the regulations to limit Cybercab deployment. So given all of those factors, I would not be concerned about this for now. Tesla could apply for the exemption in January and have it comfortably by the summer. But I think the most eye-raising part of this whole story was that somebody at NHTSA has never heard of the Cybercab and doesn't know what FSD is. So yeah, I would still like to hear a lot more about this conversation. If you watched the shareholder meeting, you will have seen Optimus swaying and moving around like a human as it was just standing there. And then the founder of Impulse Lab said if you don't do this, you energize only one phase of the motor and you can have thermal issues while standing still. So the easiest way to think about it, this motion or swaying will naturally cycle the phases of these actuators, which can help to dissipate heat and encourage airflow and help to average out the load that any one actuator is under at any given time. And this might be more important than you think because there's been a lot of chatter about joint motors and these actuators overheating during prolonged use. And many people argue it's going to be one of the limiting factors of the early day viability of these humanoids. It's impossible to know how big of a problem it will be for Tesla because they've said that their actuators are custom. So those human-like movements from Optimus are not just for aesthetics. I think this video from Earl of Frunk Puppy should be a Tesla ad. We have the Cybertruck pulling off a U-turn, no problem, showcasing the steer-by-wire and the rear wheel steering, and then a Ford comes along and tries to do the same thing, but it can't without putting it in reverse. Which is part of why Elon is sharing things like this. Bustin said, "I've been a Tesla driver for nearly 10 years. I've driven nearly every Tesla model. Cybertruck is the best Tesla." To which Elon said, "True." So as I keep saying, it really is a shame that so few people understand all of the technological advancements that are in the Cybertruck. Andre Tierig said the world's largest public EV charging car park is actually at Giga Berlin. It's free, open 24/7, and open to every brand. With 527 Tesla wall chargers powered by green energy, it keeps our employees and visitors' cars charged daily. And just a heads up, when it comes to Elon's Tesla ownership and his active voting power, my plan all along has been to wait until the Delaware court case is settled, because that will obviously have a big impact on this whole situation. Now, if you want a special segment going into detail now, just comment now. But given the voting is now concluded for a while, unless a special meeting is called, we most likely have time to let the dust settle, and so when we dive into it, we can have certainty it's accurate rather than operating with all of the unknowns that we have right now. So yeah, I just didn't want you to think I'm completely glossing over all of this. So once we have the clarity we'll need, we'll make sure everyone understands how the dust settles. VW said today, starting November 18th, the ID4 and ID Buzz owners will be able to access the supercharger network of 25,000 compatible DC fast chargers across North America, which is not all of the DC fast chargers in North America, but it is indeed most. VW's adapter will be available to purchase from VW dealers or online. VW owners can use the Tesla app to locate compatible stations and pay for charging sessions. Today, Waymo said, "We're offering freeway access to a growing number of public riders and will introduce the service to more over time, including as we expand freeway capabilities to Austin, Atlanta, and beyond." Also today, they're opening access across the entire peninsula, expanding service from San Francisco all the way down to San Jose, including curbside service at San Jose Mineta International Airport. So Waymo expanding its geofence and now introducing freeways. Waymo is also now officially doing on-road manual testing of their Hyundai Ioniq 5, featuring their Gen 6 Waymo driver. And these freeway rides will be in San Francisco, LA, and Phoenix. As the RoboTracker website pointed out, Waymo's updated geofence in the Bay Area is 260 square miles, compared to Tesla's sitting at 834. I know I'm a day late with this, but I definitely wanted to thank all of the veterans out there. I'll just say, as I get older and learn more about the world, it's so true that I appreciate your service more and more. So sincerely to all of you veterans and the families of veterans and all of the sacrifices that you've made as well, thank you, and I salute you. Tesla stock closed the day at $430.60, down 2.05%, while the NDX was down 0.06%. The volume was 33% below the average. Don't forget, check out Delete Me, linked below, to support an American-based company that I think is doing very important work to push back the work of all of these nefarious actors. Hope you have a wonderful day. Please like the video if you did. You can find me on X, linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.